Welcome to Random Movie Reviews. I'm Nathan, and today I'll be talking about Hannah and Her Sisters. Yep, decided to wear my robe for this one. I wanted to be comfortable and cozy and talk about a very cozy type of movie. Alright, disclaimer, let's get this out of the way now. I realize talking about a Woody Allen movie in today's day and age is a very slippery slope. It's one of the prime reasons I'm a firm believer in separating the art from the artist. I realize not everybody can do that. I totally understand, to each their own. But in terms of me talking about this movie today and talking about Woody Allen, I'm only going to be talking about him in terms of a director, writer, actor, and I'm going to be talking about all of the elements that I really enjoy about this movie in particular, and maybe about some of his other movies as well. But as far as his personal life and controversies and allegations and all of that stuff, I'm obviously not going to be mentioning any of that in this video because it's not relevant. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this movie in particular. So with that out of the way, let's get into a movie that means quite a lot to me. Hannah and Her Sisters is a movie that is quite highly regarded by most fans of Woody Allen's films. I see that movie in particular ranked amongst people's top 5 Woody Allen movies. It'd probably rank in my top 5 as well, maybe even higher now after my most recent rewatch. I think this is my 4th time actually watching the movie, and it resonated with me so much more than it has on any of my other watches. I've always really enjoyed this movie. I liked it a lot. Now I would say I pretty much love it. And it's one of those films where I think you need to get some life experience under your belt to really fully appreciate it. I may not look it with my very young face, but I am actually 30 years old. And watching this movie being 30, it hit a lot harder. And, I felt so many things while watching Hannah and Her Sisters. And that's one of the things I really love about this movie is that it's a movie that when you first watch it, it's almost like overwhelming, the amount of characters and little story arcs that are going around and the way the movie deals with funny, lighthearted stuff and then also dealing with very heavy and existential type of stuff. And, it can almost feel overwhelming at first, but as the movie goes along, there's just something really comforting and life-affirming in particular about this movie. And it just really connected with me on this most recent watch. And I love so much about this movie. I love the humor. I love the romance. I love, how chaotic the movie can feel with its characters and their personal life dramas. And I love that by the time you reach the end of this movie, you feel like you know these characters intimately and in a way that feels genuine and authentic. And in many ways, this movie's kind of like the anti St. Elmo's Fire. For those who are familiar with my channel, you know that my review on St. Elmo's Fire is one of the more popular reviews I've done on this channel. Really hate how inauthentic that movie feels, how immature it feels, and how soap opera fake bullshit that movie feels in terms of examining those particular flawed characters. And it feels like a bad joke, that movie. Hannah and Her Sisters feels like the movie that I think St. Elmo's Fire tried to be. It tried to be a movie about these people in a very particular moment in their lives, and dealing with their ups and their downs and learning how to be human and all of that stuff. But in terms of St. Elmo's Fire, that message doesn't come across at all because it's so immature and inauthentic and just terrible. But before I get into the specifics of why I love this movie so much, let's just do a brief overall synopsis of the plot. So the movie takes place within 2 years, starting with a Thanksgiving dinner and ending with a Thanksgiving dinner. And like the title suggests, the movie is about Hannah and her sisters. Hannah being played by Mia Farrow, and then her 2 sisters, Lee, played by Barbara Hershey, and Holly, played by Diane Wiest. And then we also get the characters that surround Hannah and her sisters, such as Hannah's current husband, Elliot, who is madly in love with Lee and feels like his relationship is not fulfilling him anymore in terms of his marriage with Hannah, so he looks to pursue having an affair with Lee, and we see how exciting and romantic that feels at first, but as the movie goes on, we see the turmoil that it brings those characters, and the movie deals with that. And then on the other side of that, we have Hannah's previous husband, Mickey, played by Woody Allen, a TV writer and producer who is a hypochondriac and is going through an existential crisis when he believes he has a tumor and goes to the doctor and is relieved to hear that he doesn't have a tumor. But that moment sends him spiraling through existentialism, trying to figure out what the meaning of life is and the certainty of death and what is this all for, and trying to find some sort of understanding with this, and it sends him spiraling. We also have Holly, played by Diane Wiest, who is attempting to become an actress or a writer or something creative. She doesn't really know what she wants to do, and that's why she keeps bothering her sister Hannah for lending her money so she can support her while she's trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life. And then with Lee, as she's having an affair with Elliot, she's also dealing with her relationship with Max von Sydow, a pretentious artist who is kind of dragging her down and is keeping her from wanting to live the life that she's looking to experience. And that's basically the movie in the nutshell. It's these series of vignettes between these characters and their story arcs and the way they kind of overlap with one another. And it deals with all of the facets of basically the human experience in terms of love and anxiety and self-loathing, but also finding moments of understanding and empathy. And it gives you the whole package. In terms of the story between Elliot and Lee, which takes up a big portion of the movie, that whole romance. There's kind of a controversy with that storyline and the way it ends. Woody Allen himself has talked about how he's not a big fan of the ending of Hannah and her sister, specifically the romance, the way it concludes between Elliot and Lee.
At the end of Hannah, Michael Caine is back with Hannah, but that's not the original ending I wrote. The original ending I wrote was that he's longs for Barbara Hershey, and he's terribly unhappy and doesn't have the courage to act on it and doesn't get it. I had a very bleak ending.
You know, as Elliot is having his affair with Lee, he's beginning to feel bad and guilty about what this would do to his marriage with Hannah. And by the time we get to the ending, Elliot acknowledges the very intense and passionate feelings he had for Lee has kind of faded, and he's now recognized the love that he still has for Hannah. And, you know, I've seen people debate that particular storyline and that ending on Reddit and stuff like that, where they're like, you know, Elliot is such a scumbag, and he didn't deserve to be in a relationship with Hannah, and Hannah should stand up for herself. The reason the ending of Hannah and her sisters, with that storyline in particular, works for me is that Elliot obviously is a very openly flawed character. The movie doesn't tell you really one way or another how to feel about him, and the movie doesn't try to make you sympathize with him. It's just showing you what he's feeling during this time of this intense, passionate romance he's feeling for his wife's sister. And there's a part in the movie where he's really feeling guilty about it, and he feels like he should end it, and he goes back and forth on it. And he's the type of person where, like a lot of people in this world, doesn't know what he wants. And by the time we get to the end of this movie, I disagree with people saying that, oh, it's a happy ending for Elliot. I think it's a false happy ending. This is just my interpretation of it, where Elliot is a person where he goes through phases in his life, romantic phases in terms of how he's feeling. So the feelings that he had for Lee were probably genuine at the time. They quickly faded, and now he's putting those feelings back into his marriage with Hannah, which will probably fade away again until he learns how to deal with those issues. And the movie ends with him, you know, accepting his love for Hannah at that moment, but it's probably not always going to be like that. And then we learn about Hannah's character and how she's a bit of a pushover. She keeps, you know, supporting her other sister Holly, even though she's basically mooching off of her and just getting money that she's never going to see ever again, lending it to her constantly. And she lets people walk all over her, and that's kind of what ignites the affair between Elliot and Lee. So the way these stories overlap and the way they play out, it reveals the characters in really satisfying and authentic and genuine ways. And then the other storyline is, well, you know, as Mickey is dealing with his existential crisis and trying to find meaning in life, which, by the way, this movie is very, very funny with all of those segments, and probably the biggest laugh-out moment for me in this movie, of which there are numerous ones. But one that always gets me is when Mickey goes to his parents, who are Jewish, telling him that he wants to be Catholic. I mean, oh my God, that whole scene is just comedy perfection.
You don't believe in God?
But there's a God, then why is there so much evil in the world? Well, just on a simplistic level, why were there Nazis?
Tell him, Max.
How the hell do I know why there were Nazis? I don't know how the can opener works.
But Mickey's really on a downward spiral, and it's revealed early on in the movie that, after his divorce with Hannah due to him being infertile, and Hannah asking his best friend and work colleague at the time to donate sperm and all that stuff, and that kind of sent their marriage kind of crumbling apart. They remained friends and close, and Hannah set up Mickey with Holly. And that date was a complete disaster, with another hilarious scene where Holly takes Woody Allen, of all people, to a punk club, and she's doing cocaine, and it's a very, very bad date. Well, later on, towards the end of this movie, they reunite and connect, and they kind of make fun of their first date and talked about how terrible it was. And they're having a really great talk about that at a record store where, they're starting to develop these romantic feelings for each other. Holly mentions that, Mickey looks really good and he seems a lot less anxious, and, what happened? What changed him, right? So Mickey talks about his low point. This is kind of like the heart of the movie is around this scene here, where Mickey reaches an all-time low, not discovering the meaning of life, and he feels so low that he's going to commit suicide with a rifle that he owns. Which, by the way, that is the most unbelievable thing in this movie, that Woody Allen, Mickey, would own a rifle, but it's fine for the story. He's sweating profusely, and he puts the barrel to his head, and it slips off his head and shoots the mirror behind him, and it kind of jolts him, and the neighbors are coming over, and he's embarrassed and he's freaking out. And so this is kind of a wake-up call. He's walking the streets of New York, trying to gather all of his very intense thoughts, and he goes to a movie theater and he watches a Marx Brothers movie. And this is the moment where he realizes that it's okay to not have all the answers to life. No one's going to have those answers. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a philosopher or you're a scientist or you're somebody who's very nervous about everything like Mickey. Nobody really has the answers to what the meaning of life is. And he comes to terms with that. And he also comes to terms with, life is not always a sad and disparaging thing. He's watching a movie right now that's making him feel good. He's laughing. It's a childhood favorite movie of his. It's bringing him joy, and it makes him realize that, life is not always a drag.
What the hell? It's not all a drag. And I'm thinking to myself, geez, I should stop ruining my life searching for answers I'm never going to get, and just enjoy it while it lasts.
And that's kind of the turning point for Mickey, and then him and Holly, a woman where they originally had a really terrible first date and you would never see them together in a million years, end up getting together. And then the movie fast forwards a year later where they're married, and Holly ends up saying that she's pregnant with Mickey's child. And it's a surprisingly optimistic and upbeat ending. Woody Allen's more known for having bittersweet endings, but I think the ending for this movie does feel earned, and it works for the overall themes of which Allen is exploring in this movie in particular. And then on top of the fact that, this movie has all of these really interesting characters, and there's great moments of comedy throughout the movie that works perfectly with the drama that's happening in the stories. The movie looks fantastic. The soundtrack is absolutely wonderful, and the performances across the board are just pitch perfect. This is definitely one of Allen's strongest movies from a technical standpoint. It really gets everything right with this movie. Anyway, that's my thoughts on this lovely, wonderful film. A life-affirming movie that brings me a lot of comfort and joy, and I just love it dearly. But I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on this movie if you've seen it? Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Mention it in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching.